I am uncomfortable. Let me paint a picture for you. You're an ant, just minding your ant business. You're marching, carrying things from place to place. You're in a straight line, and sometimes you're in a group with other ants. It's just business as usual. Then out of the clear blue sky, literally out of thin air, a spore floats down and lands on you. And then it seeps into your bloodstream and slowly starts to take over your body. When I say take over, I mean take over as in mind control. The Cordyceps fungus literally takes over an ant's body to the point of controlling how it acts, where it goes, and what it does. In a video called Zombie Parasite Takes Over Insects Through Mind Control, we see an ant displaying the typical I've been taken over by alien life forms type of behavior. It's twitching, acting erratic, but then it starts to do something that really kept me up at night. Ants infected by the Cordyceps fungus are always compelled to climb about 9.8 inches above the soil. 9.8 inches. I'm sorry, what? Let's just pull over for a second and talk about that, because that is a very specific number. So it turns out that 9.8 inches above the soil is where you'll find the perfect conditions: light, humidity, temperature, everything you need for, you guessed it, optimal fungal growth. Researchers in the Khao Chong Sanctuary in Thailand collected a bunch of infected ants from where they found them about 9.8 inches above the soil and moved some of them to the ground and some of them to the canopy layer of the rainforest. And they observed that fungal growth at those two new locations was very erratic and very reduced. So there's a zombie fungus that takes over an ant's body and makes it walk to a place with the perfect conditions for more fungal growth. Just think about that for a second and be disturbed with me. Can you imagine the other ants seeing an infected ant and being like, hey, we're working on a group project. Do you want to explain why you're 9.8 inches above the soil? And the infected ant is just staring at a leaf like, I don't know, this just feels right. You ever felt like this before? No, I'm good. I'm gonna actually stay on the ground. You can have the day off. Scientists don't actually know how the fungus is able to make ants do something so specific. In a paper called Three-Dimensional Visualization and Deep Learning Model Reveals Complex Fungal Parasite Network in Behaviorally Manipulated Ants, researchers realized that the fungal cells called hypha actually multiplied and formed a network around the muscle fibers of infected ants. These networks not only pierced the membrane of some of the muscle fibers, but some of them were also embedded in the muscle cells themselves. So the interesting thing about three-dimensional visualization and deep learning model reveals complex fungal parasite network in behaviorally manipulated ants is they didn't actually find any of those complex networks in the ant's brain. So basically, there's a zombie fungus that is able to manipulate an ant's behavior in a very specific way without ever actually touching its brain. And it turns out it's not the only parasite that does this, but we have to stay focused because things get so much worse. So once the ant is about 9.8 inches above the soil, the fungus compels it to bite down in what scientists have creatively labeled a death bite or a death grip. And spoiler alert, it dies. Because of this death bite, once it dies, it stays relatively attached to whatever it chomped down on. But for good measure, the fungus starts to grow these tendrils out of the ant's body and essentially glues it down to wherever it died. But wait, there's more. And that more looks like a stem-like alien plant that grows out of the back of the ant's head. And if you're wondering what that looks like, there are so many time lapses on YouTube where you can watch an alien plant-looking fungus stem pop out of the back of a dead, mummified-looking ant's head. I'm joking. I watched a lot of these. If this wasn't happening to ants, I would be building a spaceship right now, applying to SpaceX, and they'd be like, ma'am, are you an engineer? And I'd be like, no, I'm just coming with y'all. Looking out of the window of the spaceship like, I like space. Do you like space? This is nice. I could get used to this. The purpose of this growth is to release more spores and just rain them down on all the other ants, creating new hosts and continuing this horrible, horrible cycle. A cordyceps outbreak is so serious that it can actually wipe out an entire colony of ants. And it's not just ants. There are many different species of the Cordyceps fungus, and each specializes in attacking a different insect. So there's a species of the Cordyceps fungus that specializes in attacking the caterpillar of the ghost moth. These caterpillars spend their entire lives underground until they're ready to emerge as mature moths. But if it gets infected by the Cordyceps fungus, the zombie caterpillar starts to crawl upwards and stops right below the surface of the soil. And then it dies. Not surprisingly, the Cordyceps fungus grows a stalk out of the top of its head. This stalk is so long that it's able to pierce the soil and spread its spores. So you're walking along the Tibetan countryside and you think you see the stalk of a plant sticking out of the soil. But it's not the stalk of a plant at all. It's the long stem of a zombie-making fungus sticking out of the head of a dead mummified caterpillar. The country. These things look absolutely insane. It looks like a rhinoceros had a baby with a caterpillar. Turns out these head-exploded fungus rhinoceros caterpillar things are actually a key ingredient in Chinese medicine. So there are thousands of people every year that scour the Himalayan countryside trying to find these things so they can harvest and sell them. And for good reason. You can make a lot of money off of this. There's an article on NPR called Caterpillar Fungus, the Viagra of the Himalayas, that reports that a pound of this stuff can go for as much as $50,000. $50,000. Unfortunately, due to the high price point, the warming climate, and its reputation as the Viagra of the Himalayas, the species of Cordyceps that is known to take over these caterpillars is actually being threatened by overharvesting. Because even if it's about body-snatching, zombie-making, parasitic fungi, humans will still find a way to get their little hands in there. Shout out to everybody watching this. There's a whole lot more where that came from. Tune in next time to see you outside. I think there's too much news.